What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Moving with Life. This is episode 119. 119 episodes. Not counting the Music Never Stops episodes. But thanks for joining. I hope you all are having a good week so far. Hopefully you got something out of Monday's episode. As we've built, from the beginning of 42 Rules of Life, 42 Rules of Life, Jordan B. Peterson. It's made me think a lot too. So I've been writing a lot, and even sometimes I'm trying to these past last episode and this episode. I'm glad I was able to find something that I felt I could bring of value. But it took me a little bit. Now, to be frank, I got kind of worried too, because I sometimes go into these waves of writing or typing, or even sometimes just a flow of reading. Sometimes just my flow of reading. I'm just going. Especially when I put down a lot of ideas and then I try to associate it with my life. When I put a lot of that down in on the podcast, it leads me sometimes to reach a point where it's like, okay, I kind of need to rebuild again I don't even know how to word it yet, because it's really not recycling is not the right word either. Just regenerating or generating again, generating new, generating a new flow for the podcast. Because that's what happened leading up to the 42 rules, and then through the 42 rules, I found this flow and this flow state, right? And so I did it, and I try to do my best with it. And then because of how much content and time it took, then I have to regenerate that flow again, because frankly it reminded me of, I guess it was 2019, late 2018, especially when things started changing and I knew I was going to this next adventure and whatnot. But there were definitely moments where I didn't know what I wanted to, and my biggest thing is sometimes you'll have, because I've heard it from other podcasters and other influencers that I listen to on a we'll say weekly basis, but they're like, sometimes episodes will suck, or sometimes it just won't be your best episode. And it's like, sometimes I know when I'm getting there, and I don't want to do that. So it's trying to continue forward with what I'm doing outside the podcast, and then hopefully that will allow me some more building blocks for this next, the next series or whatever, the next group of podcast episodes that I want to do. So today we're gonna stay with Kamal Ravikant's book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. Another little excerpt that comes after the part I read on Monday. And this one, it made me think, and I'll get into what it made me think about. I want to read it first, and then we'll jump right into what it made me think about and just my point of view. New Year's Day. Last time this year, I asked myself specific questions about what I wanted and wrote down the answers. Looking back, many of them came true. That is the power of deciding what you want and stating it clearly. I'm starting to remember that life begins from the inside out. If I focus on what's within, the rest will resolve itself. So this year, I will do something different. Rather than goals to achieve, I will decide who I want to be and then state that clearly. I ask myself, if I love myself truly and deeply, who would I be? The answer is clear. I would be excellent. Then I ask myself, what would this require? Again, clear answer. Loving myself fiercely. And I'm not going to go into the details as what led him to that. Obviously, this is towards the tail end of the book. If the hard part for me, as I digress before I get back to this part of the story, is I've found it hard to give or gift recommendation books of recommendation because I've over time, and this started 2016, definitely 2017, but 2016 definitely kind of started my train of thought, my perspective was changing. But these books that interest me don't interest everybody. And now I'll still give a recommendation, like, hey, like this book is actually really good. Maybe you'll enjoy it. Sometimes lately it's come down to telling only specific people, hey, I think you specifically would enjoy this book, and here's a couple points why. And you can, and then at that point, then if they're gonna jump into it, they're gonna jump into it voluntarily and take it as they will. And hopefully they, if they happen to get it, hopefully it does impact them the way I would hope it impacted them, because of what it's done for me. And this particular part, as I was going through the book and I got to this part of the story, it immediately made me think of 2020 versus where we are now. Because March 20, a year ago this week, I was coming back from the East Coast from training, and COVID was becoming a thing. Nothing had been shut down yet, but it was definitely raising eyebrows, making people, think, where everybody was wondering, where is this going to lead? How bad is this virus? How bad are things going to get? I didn't even think about, like, I guess in depth, I didn't think about businesses. But in reading this part, it's like New Year's Day. Last time this year, I asked myself specific questions about what I wanted and wrote down the answers. And I think about that now because I feel like 2021 for me is going to be my regeneration year as far as me on a personal level, because I've kind of stepped into this and I'm doing this on my own. As far as I am doing it outside, like, content creation and work and creating content and work and everything else that I have obligations to. But again, it still led me to 2020 versus now. Where are we now? Things are kind of opening up. More people are getting the vaccination, which is good. People are getting their second dose. Johnson & Johnson's coming out with theirs sometime soon, which should only be one dose. And then that led me to think of even 2019, because then I'm looking at the stock market, I'm looking at finance in general, because of the impact that 2020 had. But then, like, if you think about just businesses and things that were happening as a whole, and you think of 2019 to, you could think of really up until forever. 1918 was when the I think it was the Spanish flu. And that lasted, X amount of years. I'm not gonna look it up because it's a small point in this actual idea. But that's what this made me think of, and I was like, I can talk about that because I know 2021 already feels different. I feel a sigh of relief. I feel more optimistic. It's not that I haven't been optimistic. I knew things were going to change because a lot of things, as the cliche goes, things are temporary. And time keeps moving because time keeps moving. Certain things are temporary. Even the Spanish flu, that's temporary. All these things that have happened, they're temporary, and then we get over it as humanity, not really society, but as humanity has it, as humanity does. We figure out a solution, and then we get over that mountain, no matter how big we thought it was, a year ago to now. It's interesting how it kind of tied in, today being today's the 16th for me. You'll hear this on the 16th, 17th, 18th. And yeah, it just took me automatically back. Like, yeah, like a year ago I was, not here, and now I'm here. And I've been here for a year. And as soon as that first vaccine got released, for emergency use, I think it was late December. It was like, now things are changing, and like I said, and because of that, and because more people are getting it, and they're being distributed by the millions. Even the second dose, they're doing this by the millions. It's good, and my hope, because I don't know how wide the rumors are, but things are starting to open. Texas has opened up, floor's been open basically. They really jumped in head first into the herd immunity. But things are going to open, and because of that, and because we're going to have a new normal, but we're going to have some maybe some new ways of thinking, some new ways of doing things as far as cleanliness and hygiene. We can look forward to these next coming months of like, okay, cool. I can take a deeper breath. If you haven't been able to work, or hopefully by now, your work situation has been taken care of. Sometimes it means finding, we've talked about, fear and jumping into new things. It's like sometimes maybe it's jumping into a new job, learning a new skill, learning so that you can progress, and because you have to survive. You have to survive, especially if you have a family. There's so many underlying factors that will lead to that. Yeah. One thing, as I was reading this, because really it feels like March right now is New Year's Day. New Year's Day, January 1st, 2021 didn't feel exactly like New Year's Day, at least for me. And there's different reasons too, but that's neither here nor there for this podcast and this content. But in reading this, as far as remembering, I started to remember that, this is going back to the book. I'm starting to remember that life begins from the inside out. If I focus on what's within, the rest will resolve itself. And even when I was making my notes for this episode and for this segment of the book, that part made me remember there was a Christmas / New Year, and I don't remember what grade I was in. I was young, and it was like, I don't know. I was young. I remember, because my dad would travel for work, I would be able to go with him on these trips, and I remember not being home for Christmas, and I actually remember all, like most of the gifts I got. That this will give my, especially for those that don't know me on a personal level, but for those who do, it's like it gives away more depth to my age and just how long ago this was. But anyway, anyways, going back to New Year's and Christmas, so I was away from home on Christmas, and I remember calling home and talking to my mom, and we talked, and it was a somber moment because I wasn't home, and like they were all my family, and for my family, my family, my mom's side, we do tamales, and then on my dad's side we do other things, and for that whole experience of New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, I wasn't home this particular year, and that even then it made such an impact on me. And I know it has a lot to do with like how I conduct myself now, but to keep it all relevant, I remember calling home, and I did that, and I said, "Hey, open my gifts because I want to know what I got for Christmas." And we got through the gifts, and it's like, okay. And I remember being happy, but then it's like, but I'm not home, and it was like, it was just different. I had, I was young. I was 10 years old, probably 11 years old, maybe. And not probably, let's say around there. I don't know how old I was, around there. And so, yeah, it had to have been around that time. And so that ended, the phone call ended, and it was like, man, this is not what I want all the time. I had never missed that, and there's no reason for me to, but that's just the way things panned out. So eventually we got the business side of the trip got done, and we were going back home, and it was New Year's Eve. I guess the way things panned out with the trip, and then the way the days ended up being, we got to roll in New Year's Eve night, and it was probably 8. It wasn't that early, but I remember it being dark by the time we got to my grandparents' house, and by that, in those times we used to make this big old bonfire, and there's plenty of fireworks, and all my cousins, a lot of my cousins were there, and we get there, and I remember we were already getting close because we were already getting close to my hometown. And I remember calling my uncle or talking to I don't know if I called him or I talked to my uncle, but I was talking to my uncle. I just remember talking to my uncle, and I said, "Hey, we're almost there." I think I think initially I played a joke saying, "Hey, we're not gonna make it. We're running behind." Blah blah blah. And I said, "I'm just kidding. We're on our way. We're like say an hour out, an hour at the most out, and we're gonna go straight there." As we got into town, and then we got there, and now in retrospect, so now we're skipping the rest of what happened the rest of the night with the bonfire and fire, all that fun stuff. So I got to see my family. We got to be there for New Year's. It was fun, cool. My cousin came with me, went home with me. We were hanging out because I hadn't seen him obviously in the 2 weeks that I was gone, or week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was. I got my gifts, and then we were hanging out, whatever. So, anyways, in retrospect, that's one of those moments where that's one of the New Year's that I'll never forget, because that's between Christmas and New Year's. It's like it was sad because I wasn't home for Christmas, but then it ended really well. And then for the next week or whatever it was until we went back to school, it was just hanging out and having a good time and whatever. But this made me think of that, because life begins from the inside out. And again, this is a retrospect thing where it's that's a moment for me that definitely is in me. That's if I have to travel or do things for work, I want to have a little more control over it, if obviously if possible. And even then, there's been many Thanksgiving days, Christmas days, where if a gig would pop up, I'd go play it. And a lot of times, I'll argue most of the time it wasn't even because I was let's say money hungry and I want a gig, or I wanted the money from the gig. It's no, I wanted the gig. I wanted to go play. That's what I was doing. That's what I did. That's what I do, right? So it's interesting. And the whole thing, because I don't know how you the listener will take this, but it's been an interesting navigation for me, because I still remember that thing that happened almost 20 years ago. Almost 20 years ago. And I still remember that story. I still remember that part of that moment. And it's really a moment in my life because it didn't last long. And, as much as I was sad when I was gone, I was equally, if not more happy when I got home, and everything was just more sweet. It was a bittersweet trip in reality, but then it ended good. So it's there's almost like a delayed gratification, but unbeknownst to me, as a 10-year-old, and then I'll tie this into here. It's realizing all that my dad sacrificed for what we got to do when we had. So it's because it wasn't his first rodeo missing a Christmas or some type of a family event, and now I talk about it a lot more at peace, because that's part of the gig. It's part of the job. It's part, it's part of the way we lived. It's part of our family. And again, it's what that's what he did for a living. It is what it is. And now, I'm here, X amount of miles away from home. It's I'm doing the same thing, I'm doing the same thing. And it's just the way the dice roll. And that's for now. This is a phrase along with I forgot what it was. One of the phrases I used the last time, but it is this is the way it is. This is the reality, because at the end of the day, it is my choice, and it's okay, we can just maximize the times we do have, maximize not where I'm looking at that New Year's in retrospect, not looking at these current New Year's and Christmas and Thanksgiving, anytime I get to be home, not waiting, a month. I remember when we did this. I wish I would have enjoyed it more. It's no. Freaking enjoy it now. Enjoy it now. And maybe that's one of the premises of this part of this episode and this part of the book for me. No, don't freaking wait. And I can go into goals and do I have anything? Yeah, I guess I can tie my third point into goals and whatnot. But now that this new little line of ideas and thoughts, no, don't wait for a month or two to think back. Oh yeah, that was such a good time. No. I'm here. we're having a good time, and I'm going to have a good time. And whoever's here is choosing to be here. Whoever's not here is choosing not to be here. And because same goes for me. At least I hold myself I hold myself at that level. And there's certain things, especially when it comes to time. And I've talked about time over money. I talk about a lot of stuff like that, and it gets me fired up because I don't like hearing 6 months later, "Oh, I wish I would have enjoyed this then." And it's like it's at least you realize it, but let's not have to get like that all the time. Because I know you're there, you're home, you're with the people you want to be with, you're with whoever you want to be with, you're doing what you want to do, you're making that choice. It's a conscious choice. It's like good, execute the happiness, execute the happiness, execute the fact that you're alive and you're doing this, and you're with the people that you choose to be with because you want to be with them. Yeah. Don't. There's plenty of lessons to be learned because sometimes we do get caught up in our emotion and don't see what's right in front of us. Take things for granted, take people for granted, take moments for granted, I think it fires me up because I know it's something that I deal with. So I try to do less of the retrospective like appreciation. It's like, no, I'm here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here. Glad you're, I'm appreciative then. And I like to be known because then we're going to be, miles, years, months down the road. And it's like, oh yeah. Now it's good to have memories. Good memories are good and it's good to have because that's what you have. As time goes on, you have, it's like, oh yeah, especially when you're in a bad spot, if you're in a bad spot in your job or your personal life, whatever it may be, and it's like, oh, you're kind of down in the dumps. But then you think about those good things. Okay, good. You have those good memories. You have those good times. But I think for me, it's tying in 2020 to 2021, 2019 and before. Excuse me. To not let ourselves be so immobilized and what's the word I'm looking for? Paralyzed by something bad for too long. We can get out of it. And even then, now to go on to my final point of this episode, because here obviously it's love yourself like your life what's it called? Love yourself like your life depends on it. So the last section is like I asked myself, if I love myself truly and deeply, who would I be? The answer is clear. I would be excellent. Then I ask myself, what would this require? Again, clear answer: loving myself fiercely. Another thought, because of reading this book, it's something I've pondered on for myself too. But to tie in, I would be excellent. It's like getting to creating the time to define that now, and maybe it'll change later. Maybe excellent for you right now is to make $1,000 this month. Just giving an example, and cool. And then later on, you're like, oh, that $1,000, it didn't even matter. I would rather go live on a van, and that's your type of that's your new definition of excellence. I'm giving those extreme spectrums because that's how my mind works. Sometimes it's like, oh, I want this. It's like, oh no, I think I want this. Oh no, I want that thing over there. It's like, oh my god. And I tell myself like, dude, just I tell myself, figure it out, and get your shit together because that's how I feel half the time. But with that, I laugh about it because this is life. Or in my opinion, this is what my life has built up to, is getting to these moments in my day where if I'm not talking about it, I'm writing about it, I'm reading about it, and it's all connected. And so I laugh about it because I tell myself to get my shit together because life is still funny. Life is humorous, and you should have a sense of humor. And that's something I'm learning too. I think if you meet me in person for the first time or in a work setting versus a play setting, let's just say a bar or in some type of social event, some type of social interaction versus like work, you're gonna it's going to be different because hey, we're here to work. This is how I approach myself at work. And then when I'm off work though, I'm having fun. I'm chilling, and that's why I laugh about getting my shit together. And I'll say it over and over again because it's like I don't mind being the butt of the joke. I said that to friends that they're like, oh yeah, whatever, and they drop my name in there. It's like cool. If it makes you laugh and gets you through the day, then I'm all for it. I'm not opposed to being a part of the joke, being the butt of the joke. It's literally fine because it's necessary. And if you can't take a joke, then you need to rethink your entire approach. I'm not saying reapproach like your life, like oh my god, but humor is good. Humor is good. We should be able to laugh way more often than we do. And so yeah, I think I said everything I need to say for this episode. My third point that I was trying to tell him, but I went down a different road. But progress makes perfection, and sometimes it takes retrospective events to realize how you want to improve from now moving forward. But that is progress because you see something, you're like, oh, I remember that. I don't want to do that again, or I did that. I want to do that again. It worked for me, and then go on and execute the next one. But progress makes perfection. That's kind of been one of my themes lately, and some of this is it's not regressive. Some of it's used again because it's not reused, it's not recycled. It's not. I'm using this principle that I learned whenever X amount of time ago. And it's like, I'm going to point again in my life where, I'm going to reuse that. I'm going to reuse that thing because I've used it. It works for me. And and that helps me get my shit together. So, yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that my little flare of energy gave you something to think about and execute because that's what we're here to do. If you'd like to support the podcast, the link is in the show notes. If you'd like to communicate, everything in the show notes, Instagram, email, the Etsy. I started blogging mildly again. We'll see how long I last this time. I've mentioned it in different podcasts. I've had it in the show notes before, and I just stopped for another while for X, Y, or Z reason. This is the hoodie that you can get on the Etsy website. I have stickers. There's another hoodie. There's another t-shirt. Main thing is just spreading the word and then going and doing what you need to do, what I know I need to do. Me doing this podcast just helps me get things aligned mentally as well so that I can go forward and execute on things that I want to do outside of just the podcast. And then hopefully if I can bring enough stories and themes and personal experience, then you can take something out of it. You can take something from it and use it for your own progress. Because perfection doesn't exist, but we can always make progress to be perfect, to want to be perfect. I've mentioned the Matthew McConaughey thing where he says, someone asked him, hey, who do you want to be when you grow up or something like that? And then he's like, I don't know, give me 2 weeks. And so he came back 2 weeks. He's like, so who do you want to be? He's like, well, I want to be me in 10 years. And then when 10 years down the road, the same person asked him, hey, are you who you want to be now? He's like, no, I want to be me in 10 more years. And so, there's a lot of that underlying in my subconscious as well. Like, I want to maximize right now, but I also want to progress to make sure that I'm going in the right direction, 10 years from now. All right. Deep breath. So yeah, take care of yourself mentally and physically. Take care of your teams, take care of your family, take care of your household, take care of your people, whoever that may be. Lead from the front. Go and learn something. Share it with others. And don't forget that progress makes perfection.